All right. Late 1990s. I am traveling around the country with two colleagues, and we are introducing a concept that was new to the United States. It was called laughter for no reason. It's since been called laughter yoga. And have any of you heard of that concept of laughter yoga or laughter for no reason? A few of you have got your hands raised. So we were on a 22-city tour, and one of the cities that they bring us to is Phoenix. It's toward the end of the tour, and the media has us going to 8 different places, but the last place they have us going is a daycare for 5 to 8-year-olds. Seemed a bit odd to be talking to kids about laughter. They pretty well have it, but we go where we're sent. And so we go, and as we walk into this carpeted small room, there's about 50 children, and they're seated on the floor, and oh my God, they are so excited. They're just wiggling and squirming. They're so happy to see new faces come into the room. And so I began the introductions, and I said, I'm Karyn Buxman, and I traveled from Missouri. To my left is Steve Wilson, who traveled from Ohio. And to my right is Dr. Madan Kataria, who traveled all the way from India. And then Steve asked the children, does anyone know where India is? And every hand went up. The kids are going, oh, pick me, no, pick me, no, pick me. And so Steve points to this little boy in the very front row who's about to become unglued. And he says, okay, son, okay, where's India? And he said, I forgot. And the little boy next to him shoved him and goes, I know, pick me. And I said, okay, where's India? And he said, it's right here in Phoenix. And I said, I don't think so. And he threw up his hands and said, well, it used to be. Later, I was thinking about the children in this room, and I realized that every single one of them almost dislocated their shoulder because they just wanted to be involved. They were so enthused, and they didn't care if Sally thought that they looked silly or if John thought he looked like an idiot. They just didn't care. They just wanted to be involved. How many of you can remember the last time you were that excited and you just wanted to be involved? You almost dislocated your arm and said, pick me, pick me. How many of you are thinking, pick him? You never pick him. He always gets the easy stuff. You let him slack off. You're always picking me. Why do you have to pick me? And especially this morning, after you've had a little bit of a late night last night, I came down and oh my gosh, what an amazing evening. But we actually did teach the laughter exercises, and given the fact that maybe you've had not quite your full 9 hours of sleep, that we'll do a little laughter exercise, because part of what I'm going to talk to you today about high-performance humor involves a lot of steps, but a little bit of it is stepping outside of your comfort zone. Sometimes people say, well, I don't want to use humor, I don't want to use that stuff because I might look silly. And nobody has ever died from silliness, but also if it's stepping out of that comfort zone, a very, very safe way to do it. And so when we do laughter exercises, we start and end with a clap. I'm going to let you clap with me. And it goes ho, ho, ha, ha, ha. All right, together, we're going to do this 3 times. Ho, ho, ha, ha, ha. Ho, ho, ha, ha, ha. Ho, ho, ha, ha, ha. Woo! Great job. And then for the laughter exercise, I'm going to let you, this one we'll just follow the leader, because I'm not going to have you jumping up and down just yet. Following the leader, I'm going to lead with a laugh, you respond. I'll do another laugh, you respond. And then we'll bring it to a close with ho, ho, ha, ha, ha. All right, ready? if there comes a point in time where I need your attention, I understand you guys are pretty good at chanting. According to Kathy and Lenny, they send their best. And so we'll, instead of going shed, 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 because that's her stuff, we're going to go ho, ho, ha, ha, ha. So we did the laughter yoga, and I'm just going to give you a little bit of background about myself. I have had the opportunity, I love, 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 love getting in front of a group such as yours. But I have to tell you, we were talking about this group has so much heart. And you're doing such great work. When I was behind the stage, every time I talked about you, the hair would just stand up on my arm because this is such a great group. But I have had the opportunity to work with amazing leaders and celebrity ball players and Olympic gold medal winners and just tremendous athletes. And what's a little known fact about me is that I also am an athlete. I actually was a cheerleader at one time. Yep. Hannibal, Missouri, black and red. And then I lettered twice in cheerleading. The first letter asked me to resign from the squad. The second letter asked me to return the uniform. So I didn't take that up as a professional career. Later, I went into nursing. How many of you have ever been in nursing, whether now or in your past? Let me hear a round of applause. That is awesome, because I love speaking to healthcare, and especially nurses, because talk about sense of humor. You have such an amazing sense of humor, and it's sick. And you're proud of that. You can be talking about body fluids, death, and dismemberment over every meal, and you're slamming it down. And we use, oh yeah, it was cherry red in appearance, and it was a hamburger kind of appearance, and it's cheesy, and an outsider would think you're talking about, developing a meal, but no, you're talking about body fluids, death, and dismemberment. So, actually, while I was in graduate school, I was teaching a school of nursing at a time, had a wide variety of background when I first got started. I worked in a clinic, I worked in med-surg, I worked ICU, I worked ER. I taught for a while pediatrics, OB, geriatrics. I also did home health, school nurse, where I chased head lice on 2,000 children, grades kindergarten through seniors. And after that, went back to teaching, also did some air ambulance, psychiatric nursing, and now I know what you're thinking. She couldn't hold a job. I love everything that I do, but it was while I was teaching at a college of nursing that I went back for my master's. How many of you have ever been to an institution of higher learning? Okay. And they want to take the fun out of all of that learning experience. I studied humor. I convinced my advisors to let me look at the relationship between humor and health and communication. And it was this aha moment, this epiphany, that this was to be my life's work. And I have been researching humor now for 30 years. 30 years. And it's been in the last 10 years that I've really focused on humor in the brain, leadership, and high performance. I'm so excited to share that with you because I know that we have a lot of high performers in here. So I am a self-proclaimed neurohumorist, and I know what a lot of you are thinking, oh my gosh, they just keep bringing in all these neurohumorists. But there are leaders and high performers who totally get it and who are already using humor successfully. Many of our greatest leaders in the past were using humor. Leaders like Gandhi, Lincoln, Churchill, Kennedy, Reagan, Hawkeye Pierce. Are any of you in here too young to know who Hawkeye Pierce is? Show of hands. Okay. MASH. MASH. Go back and watch MASH. some great lessons in every episode. I love one of Hawkeye's quotes that said, "Insanity is merely a state of mind." This is about high-performing leaders and how you can use this in your work. Humor is power. It is power. Now, it could be a tool, it could be a weapon. And in terms of our findings, there's two primary areas that come out of this, if you don't count entertainment, because entertainment is great. I love entertainment. But in terms of application, which is what you're about, we're looking at either resilience. How many of you have ever had a little stress in your lives? Right? Every time you see one of those chairs and dials, you have this overwhelming desire to lay down in it. So, or other people around you start having an attitude problem. Or you're putting chocolate chips in your Caesar salad. Little few signs that you're burning out. But particularly in terms of influence. And I'm going to be talking to you more and more about influence and how that can help you and how high-performance humor can help you in terms of being stronger together. In our studies, we have found that humor is a whole brain activity. It is amazing. All parts of the brain light up during the studies when people are experiencing humor. The prefrontal cortex is the part of your brain that experiences wit. This is the cognitive portion of, well, is this funny? Then we have the limbic system, which is the emotional component, mirth. And this is that good, fun feeling that you have when you're experiencing humor. And then the occipital lobe is where the physiological expression of humor is laughter. And when we have those components in place, all together, that's a sweet spot. But when we experience humor, it's all over our brains. We have this amazing cascade of neurotransmitters that affect every single part of our body. The healing powers of humor, we're just beginning to figure this out. One of my best friends and colleagues, Dr. Lee Burke, is one of the leading psychoneuroimmunologists in Loma Linda. And he said, if we took what we now know about laughter and bottled it, it would require FDA approval. When I was doing my research for one of the books I wrote, What's So Funny About Diabetes, we found that, we found that patients who intentionally practiced humor lowered their blood glucose. They lowered their renin and angiotensin. They lowered the inflammation in their body. They lowered the negative HDL, or not that negative HDL, the negative LDL, and their cholesterol came down. And what was even more amazing was not only was this affecting them at the cellular level, but below and beyond the cellular level, they had positive changes in their DNA. People, we're talking epigenetics. And if we could help more persons with diabetes to help with their disease, how many patients could we help maybe having to exodus into your care? In terms of the brain, though, and influence, this is part of what I want to talk to you about in terms of whether or not you are able to find things that are amusing to you, whether or not you are a humor appreciator or a humor initiator. Let me see a show of hands. How many of you in here think you're funny? Come on, let me see them. That's good, that's good. Now, there's one person, I'm not going to bust you. The person beside you was pointing at you going, I don't think so. But those of you who are funny know the value of being funny. and you recognize that you're almost like a magnet to people, and that you can be that like court jester of your department and lower the stress and make people feel good. But by show of hands, how many of you have a sense of humor? I expect every hand to go up if for no other reason. It's socially unacceptable to admit you don't have a sense of humor. And beyond that, as leaders, one of the top 3 traits that people look for in a leader is sense of humor. Now, I will also say one of the top 3 traits that people look for when you're dating online. Also, sense of humor. Just saying, in case you don't have enough incentive for the first. But you want people to think that you're funny, or think that you have a sense of humor, even if you feel you don't, because we have ways of nurturing your sense of humor. And we can help you move up that scale to finding the amusement around you. In a book that I'm working on with Forbes that'll be out this fall, one of the tools we've developed is called the Humor Quotient. And in the Humor Quotient, we measure 2 variables. The variable that's the horizontal is your level of humor appreciation. And we have a longer assessment, but in terms of a short assessment, here's the 2 questions. In terms of appreciation, on a scale of 1 to 10, how easily are you able to find things that amuse you intentionally that result in a smile or a laugh or feelings of enjoyment? Kind of think about where you would give yourself on that scale. Most high performers would rank at least 5 or above. Now, the vertical line, however, is application, because it's not enough to just know this. And the application question, on a scale of 1 to 10, how often do you intentionally, there's one of your leading values words, intentionally, proactively, by choice, how often do you use humor for a desired outcome? And a desired outcome can be everything from just feeling less stressed to diffusing a situation at work or negotiating a big contract. So how often do you intentionally use humor for a desired outcome consistently and over time? Because those are the traits of high performance, consistently and over time. And so some of you may rank above a 5. Some of you may rank a little bit lower. But in terms of high performance, when I'm working with companies and I'm coaching leaders, we're striving to get further up in that upper right quadrant. And eventually, I don't know how soon this is, you're gonna be given a link for your apps where I have a bunch of handouts that you can download, and this graph would be one if you so desire. Would you go back just a moment? Thank you. In terms of high performance humor, as I mentioned, it is about intentionality. And it is by choice, not by chance. I love the quote by Viktor Frankl. If you are not familiar with Viktor Frankl, he was captive during the war. He was in the Holocaust. He was a Holocaust survivor, and he went on later to write the book, Man's Search for Meaning. And if you've never read Man's Search for Meaning, I encourage people, I believe this is one of the top 100 books everybody should read in their lifetimes, and it'll be on my recommended readings list that you can also download. But Viktor Frankl once said, between stimulus and response, there's a space. In that space lies our freedom and our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our happiness. Stimulus, response. Stimulus, response. So often we think, well, when this happens, boom, that happens. And I don't have a choice, but you always have a choice. You even have the choice not to make a choice. But I'm saying that could you intentionally put in that space humor? If I were to ask you if you would be willing to step into your fullest potential and actually just embrace your mission, delivering superior care to your patients for the quality of the patient every day and setting the standard by which other healthcare institutions are judged, but you could do it also with the tool of humor, what would your answer be? If you answer yes to that question, you're in the right place, and you always have a choice. I'm a frequent flyer, if you haven't guessed, and I have a million stories about flight attendants. They are high performers in many, many ways, very many of them. And on one particular flight, the flight attendant in first class was getting everybody ready with the safety instructions, and just as they're getting ready to take off, she sees that one of her people in first class, I've lost the word, one of her folks in first class, he's not put on his seatbelt. Now, it just so happens that the person that she's looking at is Muhammad Ali. And so she quietly goes over to him and she says, "You need to buckle your seatbelt." And he looks at her, crosses his arms, and says, "Superman don't need no seatbelt." She smiled and said to him, "Superman don't need no airplane." She had a choice. She could have pretended like she didn't see. She could have ignored the situation. She could have played United Airlines, thrown him off the plane. But instead, she chose humor. She chose humor. You always have a choice. In terms of high performance and communication, George Bernard Shaw once said, "The biggest problem with communication is the illusion that it's taken place." It's a cold winter morning, almost noon, half-day preschool, and I'm getting ready with all my other pre-K friends, put on our coats, put on our boots, put on our mittens, and go home. And Mrs. Seeley, she's kind but firm, pre-K teacher, she's helping everybody around, and my best friend in pre-K, Jill, is sitting in her chair, not moving. Mrs. Seeley goes over to her and she says, "Jill, come on, what's the problem?" And Jill, with her big doe eyes, looks up at her and she said, "I can't get these boots on." Mrs. Seeley, she's kind, she drops to her knees and she pushes and shoves and shoves and shoves and shoves, and finally the first boot goes on. She takes a breath. She takes the second boot and she shoves and shoves and shoves, and finally she gets the second boot on. She stands up, takes a breath. She said, "Jill, your boots really don't fit you." Jill looks up at her and said, "These aren't my boots." Mrs. Seeley's mouth drops open. She comes down and she pulls the boot off, and then she goes to the other boot and pulls it off. She holds up the boots and she says, "All right, children, whose boots are these?" Jill looks up at her. "They're my brother's." Mrs. Seeley, now she's white. She's just beyond belief. She's pushing and pushing and gets the first boot on. She pushes and pushes and gets the second boot on. She stands up and she says, "Jill, where's your mittens?" "They're in my boots." You ever been on one of those ends of the conversations? Yeah. But in terms of communication, we have the ability to improve our communication through humor. And when we are using humor to influence others, that's primarily in the areas of persuasion, informing, and diffusing a situation. So let me give you a couple of examples. In terms of informing, so often I hear from leaders, well, one of the reasons I'm not sure I want to use more humor is, what if nobody takes me seriously? I have serious information to communicate. And in terms of persuading, what if nobody listens to me? What if they don't see me as professional? I know a lot of you are going to be flying out of Midway. Am I correct? Yeah. How many of you are flying Southwest? A number of you. Love Southwest. I actually love having an assigned seat, but if I can't go with my primary, I always go with Southwest. And I love the fact that they are great at informing and persuading with humor. You've often heard many of their routines when they're giving the safety instructions. One of my favorites that I've actually heard on more than one flight was from a flight attendant who told everybody, I'm just kind of dozing while people are boarding, and she says, all right, everybody, listen up. We start turning around. She says, there may be 50 ways to leave your lover, but there's only 4 ways to leave this plane. People are starting to notice, and so they pay attention, and she says, if you have to have a cigarette, you can go out to the wing in our non-smoking area and watch Gone with the Wind. We do not expect a sudden descent, but if there is one, 2 oxygen masks will fall before you. If you are traveling with a child or someone behaving like a child, put your own oxygen mask on first. If you are traveling with more than one child, well, pick your favorite. By the time she gets done giving this information, every single person on this plane is riveted to her every word. They're paying attention to a serious message. They remember it because it was delivered with humor, and they've been influenced to comply. How many of you are in sales? Yeah, all of you should be raising your hands. Because whether you are selling a product or an idea, you are in sales. How many of you have ever had to negotiate with a 5-year-old? Yeah, it is your bedtime at 6 o'clock, right? It's like, no, they're not having it. You're back and forth, trying to see if you can't win in this negotiation. Maybe you have tried to get your team to buy in for something. Or maybe you have tried to persuade a non-compliant patient. Anybody in here ever worked with a non-compliant patient? I lived with one for a while. My father-in-law assured me when he was eating all of this Hostess Twinkies and cupcakes and ding-dongs before he went in for dialysis. I said, do you really think you're supposed to be? Oh, it's okay. They wash it out of my blood. Yeah, I don't think that's how it works. But a nurse on dialysis told me she was attempting to teach nutrition, and she was telling one of her patients, she said, okay, on this renal-friendly diet, there's only 3 things you can't put in your mouth: a fork, a knife, and a spoon. So all of us are in sales, but in terms of influencing others, this is a great way to get your message across. You want to work on your strengths. And there's lots of different ways that you can do this. I'm sure that some of you in the back are not able to see this. Again, it's one of the downloads, but this is, again, a tool that we developed for the book this fall, Funny Means Money. And there are a number, it's a constellation of 13 different ways for you to practice humor. And they range from improv, anecdotes, sarcasm, wordplay, props, nonverbal, self-effacing, dark, jokes, topical. Topical is like what's going on either inside your institution or in your community. in the country, in the world, exaggeration, or zaniness, or inside humor. And all of these are great skills to have. In terms of building on your strengths, I would encourage you to look at 1 or 2 or 3 of these that you already practice, and that maybe you even do well. And as a high performer, how could you take it from good to great, or from great to amazing? How many of you are good joke tellers? Yeah, this is about the same amount I see in every group. It's like, can't remember the punchline. And that's great, because you never have to tell a joke to be a high performer. You never have to be funny to be a high performer in terms of humor, because it's not about initiating the humor, it's about appreciating the humor. How many of you like to tell funny stories, maybe about yourself, or a family member, or a patient, or a physician, or something along that means? How many of you are good at improv? Any of you in here at improv? I'm actually thinking that improv would be a great skill for you to learn and maybe try to work a little better at. The 2 primary rules of improv are very much all about what you're all about in terms of stronger together. The very first rule, yes and. Yes and. Now in terms of your empowering words, is and an empowering word? Of course. So and, will, can, all of these are empowering words. And when you are doing improv, it's about yes and, not no. When somebody says something, you go, oh, no, we can't do that. You encourage it. You encourage it. And so the disempowering words, no, I can't do that. And those are the disempowering words. So yes and then the second rule of improv is that it's not about you trying to be the best person in the troupe. It's about empowering the entire troupe, because then you raise everybody together. So I'd love for you to practice and encourage and try to do more of the yes and. The yes and. Collaborate. Working together for a goal. I came across in the literature when I was stalking you guys this amazing quote that results move at the speed of relationships. I love that. Any of you in here read the book that just came out by Sean Aker, The Big Potential? Another book on your reading list that you can download. And in The Big Potential, he talks about the fact that we can experience success as individuals, but if you want the big potential, if you want the big success, I was talking to Bill backstage, and he was talking about, we gotta dream big, we gotta think big. You want big results, you need people around you. You need a social constellation of people who are optimistic, and people who are positive, and people who are authentic. You can't do it alone if you wanna do the big dream. And so this is why they are so appreciative. This is why you're here, because you are the constellation of Fresenius. I want you to give yourselves another big hand for being the constellation here and for supporting one another. Because this is about what it is. We teach influence. And one of the things as a manager is that you want to teach those around you. You have to manage risks, right? And in terms of managing risks, there's a lot of building blocks to using high-performance humor. We teach bond, environment, authenticity, safety, timing, consistency, confidence. But I want you to think about 3 as you leave here today. One is bond, because in terms of managing risks, this is the #1 landmine that people step on. Because if you have a great relationship with a person, they will excuse humor that might be offensive, or they will excuse humor that is put off, and they'll give you another chance. But if this is a person that you've met for the first time, it's a new patient, it's a new team member, and you share humor that's inappropriate, You're going to damage that relationship and maybe ruin it forever. This is the #1 problem that people encounter, whether it's humor or otherwise, is that you and I are more alike than what we really are. Oh, I'm conservative, so you're a conservative. Oh, I like country music, so you like country music. And it's like, no, we all have our differences. And isn't that wonderful? But it's especially true in humor. And as a manager and as a leader, you want to make sure that people are identifying those boundaries. Always safe to start with self-effacing humor. The safest kind of humor as a leader is self-effacing, poking fun at yourself. And why is that? Because it shows you're vulnerable. It shows your vulnerability. And the person you're sharing with now subconsciously thinks, oh, they're making themselves vulnerable. They're safe. I can trust them. How many of you would like to be able to develop more trust among your team and more trust with your patients? You're asking people to come in and reveal their most personal information, the most private parts of their lives, and you're expecting them to trust you. How do you develop your trust? Humor can help you develop that sense of trust. Is your environment? How do you manage your environment? We have building blocks that make it stronger, increase the likability, or that things will happen, or we can have issues with people going beyond the environment. Anyone who sees, hears, or experiences your humor is part of your audience, whether you meant them to be or not. And so you need to remember that when you're sharing a story or a joke, is there somebody on the other side of the door? Is there somebody on the other side of the screen? Is it somebody who's walked in unnoticed? And be aware of your environment. And S, safety. Safety could be physical safety, practical jokes, sometimes gone wrong. Anybody ever watch this horrendous show that my boys just love, Jackass? Oh my gosh. Painful. But it's also about psychological safety. Psychological safety. Sometimes there is bullying with humor. Any kind of safe humor does not end with, I'm joking, or can't you take a joke? If you hear that, that was not a joke. That was a barb. That was meant to hurt. And we want humor that uplifts, not bring down. Coordinate. In terms of coordinate, this is about bringing together for harmony and efficiency. How do you do that? You model, you mentor, you show other people how to do it. And I remember working with a group, actually it was here in Chicago a number of years ago, and I spoke with the management, middle management up to leadership, and they said, oh man, this is so great. We want you to come to our company and we want you to talk to everybody from the middle management on down to the custodians. And I came back 6 weeks later and I delivered presentations over and over and over again for all the staff. And one of the things that was amazing on the evaluations was multiple times we saw, oh gosh, this was so helpful. I just wish my boss could have heard it. What's the problem there? They're not walking the talk. And when you are not walking the talk, but you're saying, all right, your attitude needs to improve. You need to use more humor. You know, the mindset is that firings will continue until morale improves. That's not what we're trying to get across here. You want to model. You want to walk the talk. You want to mentor others. You want to practice. You want to work on your strengths. You want to work on your environment, increase the likelihood. You want to work on your attitude. You want to reframe your pain. You know, when we're young, so much of our humor comes from pain and discomfort. It comes from joy and delight. And little kids, how many of you have a young little kid? A young little kid versus an old little kid. Well, some of us are married to those. But you know, they're just giggling out of this sense of joy. But by the time we get to be adults, much of our humor comes from pain and discomfort. We're not laughing. When was the last time you went home and laughed about your paycheck? Woo! You know, oh man, I'm having a great hair day. Look at my car. No, we're laughing about the things that make us crazy. So you twist and turn and play with your pain, and you practice seeing funny. People go, oh, but you don't know. There's nothing funny happening where I work. And if that is your belief, that is your reality. Do you understand that? If that is your belief, that's your reality. Because I'm here to tell you, it's everywhere. It's everywhere. Now, there is a part of your brain that is the reticular activating system, little finger-like projection. And it's a filter, helps you see more of what you're already paying attention to. You buy a red car, you take it out on the freeway, and then you see, oh my gosh, everybody else this week bought a red car. No, those red cars were always there, but now your brain is wired. If you ask yourself every day, what am I missing? It may take a while at first. Don't give up, because this is the mistake people make. Well, see, I was right. I didn't see anything funny today, and you give up. But if you practice, now Hebb's law comes into place. Hebb's law, neurons that fire together, wire together. And the more you do it, the easier it becomes until you start seeing humor where other people do not. You start hearing funny things where other people do not. I was in San Diego. Woo, San Diego. Love living in San Diego. And overheard at one of the hotels, a tourist sincerely asked the front desk clerk, which beach is closest to the water? Yeah, you see, how many of you have ever seen something funny in a chart? Yeah, write that down. Send them to me. I had somebody who was doing a financial audit sent me that she had found where one of the physicians had charted, patient deserves colonoscopy. We may feel that way, but do you think it's a good idea? I don't think so. So you look for things and you will hear them and you will see them. For instance, this is an actual gym in San Diego where people spend their hard-earned money to go up an escalator so they can get on the Stairmaster. You don't have to make this stuff up. Right here in Chicago, for those of you who are going out and about today, look on Whacker, you will see this sign, not a bar in sight, but absolutely no alcohol beyond this point, so start chugging. This next sign is in Central California. I don't even know what it means, but I thought it was pretty darn funny. Caution, cows committing suicide. Practice seeing funny, and the be funny will fall into place. I absolutely guarantee it. I remember after one of my presentations, a gentleman came up to me one time and said, were you always funny? And I said, I don't know, I guess so. And so I went home and I said, Mom, have I always been funny? And she looked at me and said, no. And at first it kind of hurt my feelings. But then I got excited because I realized that I hadn't been funny before, but once I saw the value, I started taking risks, and I started practicing humor, and the more you do it, the easier it becomes, and the benefits are just crazy good. Stronger together. Stronger together. I had a chance to go to San Diego. FKC, where are you, my people? Yay, San Diego, and here we have Jeb and Marilyn. Yay, you guys, you were so wonderful. And they showed me around so that I could be stronger together with you. And Marilyn told me this amazing story about a patient who actually chose not to get a kidney transplant because the community that she had created at your facility was actually so strong and so positive that she didn't want to have a kidney transplant where she would have to leave her community. I've never heard such a strong testimony than being stronger together. Yeah, give them a hand. And give yourselves a hand. They're awesome. Many of you have heard that knowledge is power. No, it's not. It's the application of knowledge that is power. You have the responsibility, now that you know all that you've learned here, to take action on what you have learned, to work and live your mission. But I want you to think about, what can you do consistently? What kind of commitment can you make? What kind of action can you take starting today? And I want you to share that with a person to your left or right. Just for 30 seconds. What's one thing that you could do? Maybe it's learn to tell a funny story. Maybe it's change your environment so that it's a greater likelihood. You could post more signs, have more funny things. You could practice seeing funny. Why am I talking into this? I don't know. Oops, no, we don't want to do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Ho, ho, ha, ha, ha. Ho, ho, ha, ha, ha. Ho, ho, ha, ha, ha. Woo, good job. All right. So you've got a way to take action, at least one. And there's a lot of different ways that maybe you haven't even thought of, but hopefully with an idea that somebody else had, in the short amount of time, it's hard to generate a lot of ideas, but the more you think about it, the easier it is, and the more you do it, the easier it becomes. Here's 10 best practices. You can take a photo of this, or again, on the app, there's going to be a download that you can download, but in terms of best practices, be authentic. Don't try to be somebody you're not. That's another thing that scares people. They think they have to go out there and be Seinfeld or Gallagher. Just be more of who you are. Be proactive. See funny. Have your end result in mind. That's one of the practices that high performance humor is about, is thinking of this as a strategy by choice, not by chance. Anticipate and prepare. You've got something coming up. How can you weave humor into it? Be consistent, manage risks. As leaders, you need to listen beyond the laughter. So many times people will tell you a serious message and they will tell it in the guise of a joke because they're waiting for your response. And if you don't respond the way they hope you would respond, and then they can just laugh and say, oh, I was only joking, and save face. But a high performance leader will understand that many times there's a message behind the laughter, and we'll step in and listen a little closer. Become a student of humor. I encourage you to, there's books, there's articles, there's online programs, there's organizations, there's so many different ways you continue to be a student. And then finally, taking your work seriously, but taking yourself lightly. We're not the center of the universe. When we want to be stronger together, we share our humor, we share our vulnerabilities. And so let me share an opportunity that I had to learn this lesson firsthand. A number of years ago, I am on my way to a meeting, and as I'm driving to my meeting, I look at my watch and I realize, oh my gosh, I'm 20 minutes early. I've never been 20 minutes early to anything in my life. And so as an overachiever, I'm thinking, what else can I shove into that 20 minutes to be more efficient? And then shiny, I'm passing my favorite clothing store, the boutique, and they are having a 70% off sale. And so it's not a high business priority, but personally, it's working out pretty good. There is a parking place right in front. I whip in, and I go to the sales rack, and there is a suit calling my name. And I pick it up, and oh my gosh, it's gorgeous, but I don't have time to try it on, and so I bury it in another size because I'm going to come back after the meeting. And I hustle out to my car, and I pull on the door, and it doesn't budge. I pat my pockets, no keys. Peek in my purse, no keys. Peer in the ignition. Who in here has ever locked your keys in your car? With or without the engine running, with or without small children and pets in the car. I am a savant. I am gifted at this. When I lived in Missouri, I locked my keys in my car so often that there was a local locksmith who gave me a great discount. Only charged me $25 and gave me like this frequent flyer card, you know, lock yourself out 9 times, 10th time free. And so I'm thinking about calling him, but this is before cell phones. So I run into the store, I find the manager, and instead I say, I'll just call my husband. So she gives me the phone, I call my husband, he picks it up, and I said, hey babe, can you bring me the spare key? He groans, oh, let me guess, you locked your keys in the car again. Don't start, just bring me the key. I'm busy. It might take me 20 minutes to get there, 20 minutes to get back. I got a full day, I got a lot to do. I said, I'm busy too. Just bring the key. Now trying to be practical, he says, well, you know, for $25, you could call that their locksmith. Now I'm begging. Just bring the key. He says, oh, all right, but you go out and be waiting at the car. Click. Now, his tone was so condescending that some of you might have accused me of having a bad attitude. But I played with my pain, and all of a sudden I realized there's clothing waiting to be tried on. There are no accidents. So I hustle over to the sales rack. I know right where my suit is. I pull it out. I try it on. It looks like it was tailor-made for me. I made my purchase. And then I walked out to the car as instructed. And I waited, and I waited, and I waited. Finally, I started begin pacing back and forth, muttering to myself, yeah, 15 minutes to get here, 20 minutes to get here, 20 minutes to get back. $25, you could call a locksmith. Finally, as I walked past the door one more time, I see out of the corner of my eye, and to my horror, that one of the car doors is unlocked. Let's recap here. We got a man coming all the way across town. He's going to save me $25. We do not want to disappoint this man. What would you have done if you were in my shoes? Lock that door! I locked that door so fast my knees turned to jello. My life was flashing before my eyes. As I'm trying to regain my composure, I turn toward the store, and now I see the manager. She's in the front window, and she's waving at me. And she's saying, while you were in trying on clothes, your husband unlocked your car. Ladies and gentlemen, that was the best $25 I've ever spent. Thank you.